to talk a bit about safety and security very briefly. As you are aware, I can do like this. So at the many office entries, there is often some form of intercom or box where you can enter codes. But it should always be ensured that, that everyone has access to them and can use them, also you. So from the blind and visually impaired person's perspective, it is important that you can easily locate the intercom or such box. You can navigate the control panel. So here is again sort of similar to elevators. The button should be in tactile or in braille. And there always should be a verbal announcement or an audible signal that lets you know that you are pressing the correct buttons on the control, as well as which announces that the door is locked or unlocked. And another thing when it's connected to safety and security is, of course, evacuation. What about evacuation in case of an emergency? It is something that we tend maybe not to think about so much, but it's very important to actually have the plan for that. So the responsibility to ensure that fire risk and hazards are reduced or removed as far as possible lies both on the owner of the building, so it has to be designed properly, but as well as the occupant of the building. So for example, we can talk about employer who should have a plan how to evacuate all of his employees. A huge part of it, reducing the threat of fire involves undertaking regular and comprehensive fire risk assessments. And this should include planning thorough evacuation plans to make the process of an emergency evacuation as simple, as safe, and as efficient as possible. Emergency evacuation plans involve taking into account the needs of each individual, which means catering to any disabilities an individual may have. So when planning an evacuation procedure for someone who is blind or visually impaired, the most important thing to consider is how you will safely and successfully exit the building. This means providing appropriate signage and orientation clues so you are able to find and follow the escape route. Again, good color definitions and accessible signage will be hugely beneficial in the event of an emergency. And also things such as handrails and step edge markings on escape stairs. Additionally, fire safety signage featuring braille or audible signs can be also installed. So there are those options that you can remember and talked about. In some environments, and depending on the individual concerned, assistance may be necessary in the event of evacuation. And in this instance, the responsible person has a duty to arrange for assistance to be provided and must also arrange for any fire safety training which is required as a result. When planning an evacuation for someone with a disability, it is commonly referred to as a PEEP, Personal Emergency Evacuation Plan. And this plan is an evacuation plan which is completely personal to the named individual, taking into account their specific disability, related requirements, location within the building, and method of evacuation. And when it comes to evacuation and safety, I mean, it's not necessary, not every country has some kind of legislation regarding this. But it still doesn't mean that these plans shouldn't be there, that you shouldn't advocate for them, because it's your safety, it's your life that it's about. So even though there may be no legislation about that in Slovakia, you can check with union about that. You should still present it to your employers, for example, so they have the plan. You should ask about it. You shouldn't be afraid to ask the questions, how do you plan in case of emergency for me? Do you have any plan? Because in the end, yeah, as I said, it's your health and it's your life we're talking about. But just to sort of starting summarizing, I hope you have learned a lot those 2 past days, and you got a lot of knowledge, and maybe just, yeah, you might be at least like categorize your knowledge, so to speak. And maybe now you are full of energy and you want to go out there and start checking which streets crossings are not accessible and which pathways or pavements are not properly designed, and so on, which elevators should be updated, and so on. And it's great. But at the same time, when there is a lot of things that maybe don't work as they should, it might be quite overwhelming, and it might be difficult both for you to know what you should address first, but also for local authorities to know how they should prioritize when there is actually a lot of things. So I want to tell you, show you some short list of how you can prioritize, and how you can sort of create some kind of a list which things can be addressed first if you, in case you, for example, want to address those issues with the local authorities. So what we think at Funka, how you can prioritize it, is like this. First, simple measures that can be taken care of at once. So a large part of the shortcomings are probably quite easy to fix. Sometimes it costs nothing more than just time it takes to fix the problem. Otherwise, the measures falls within the running costs of for premises or maintenance. The second thing might be emergency measures that must be addressed immediately. So if you notice that there are immediate dangers somewhere, they must be taken care of at once. And the risk might be, for example, that someone can fall down and hurt themselves. Or it can be, for example, a security deficiency. So the responsible authorities can and should start with a clear warning and then fix the problem as soon as possible. The third on the list can be measures that can be implemented within a year. So some measures require planning, for example, and budget. And it might happen that in this current budget year, there is no room for it. But in that case, this implementation should be planned for and budgeted for next budget year. And as soon as that year starts, they should be implemented. The fourth on the list can be measures that should be implemented on special occasions. So, for example, something that might be combination of that. They can be quite big and they can be quite costly, but as well quite necessary. But if we know that, for example, a building is supposed to get through a very big, undergo a very extensive renovation within a few years, so this can be postponed and implemented. Those fixes can be implemented at that time. And 5, there might be actually deficiencies that should not be addressed. What I mean, unfortunately, it can happen that some things cannot be fixed. But what it should be happening then is that there might be different reasons for it. So what should happen then is that local authorities should at least catalog these deficiencies and document it so they can argument for it. So it is actually somewhere written that there is a deficiency, but it cannot be fixed. So that's just a short list of how you can prioritize in case you would like to address different issues in your city. So just to summarize, which physical barriers do the blind and partially sighted encounter most frequently? How can these barriers be addressed? So the main environmental barriers encountered by visually impaired people are, of course, very individual, as we're talking about. It depends, among other things, on the level of sight loss, training, and if the environment is known or not. But in general, safe mobility and orientation are the barriers most often claimed to be a problem by visually impaired and blind people. So examples of common accessibility problems can be lack of contrast marking, especially in level differences, steps or stairs, lack of warning marking, objects that are hard to perceive, like glass walls or doors, low-hanging objects, bicycles, electrical scooters on the pavement, etc. Lack of handrails, poor lighting, poor sound environment, and poor design of orienting signage. And all of this can be addressed by and very often fixed by, as we were talking, color contrast, tactile surfaces that can be sensed both with the white cane and foot curbs and edges, and so on. But to summarize it as well, is like why is it important? What is it all about, this accessibility adjustment, and that this actually, then this physical environment works for you on equal basis with everyone else? I mean, it is about your safety. If the physical environment is not accessibility designed, your health and your life is in danger. It is also about your independence. As we talked about, I mean, we all want to be in control of our lives. And if the physical environment doesn't work, it's not, it's full of obstacles for you that can actually be eliminated or minimalized, then you can't be an independent. And it's not, and you have your independence, your right to independence is guaranteed in the UN Convention, for example. It is also about inclusion, as we were talking about. If you can't be independent, if you can't be out there, if you can't be part of the society, you are left out of it. It's not democracy. You can't participate. You can't be active citizen. You can't participate in the society on equal basis with others. You are not part of the society, and you are right to be. But it's as well about equality. It's connected to it. Just because we all have different abilities, different needs, and just because we are different doesn't mean we are not equal. Your impairment, visual impairment or blindness doesn't mean that you shouldn't participate in the society on equal basis with everyone else. And that's as well UN Convention that guarantees you that. So I really encourage you to take all this knowledge that you have now and be strong advocate for yourself. Despite legislation, if it's there or not, if it's there, it's good, use it. But if it's not there, still advocate for yourself, for your rights, because just because the legislation is not there, it doesn't mean that the right things shouldn't be done. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed those 2 days, and I hope you you feel stronger and that you feel that you have more tools to actually stand for yourself and fight for your rights. Thank you so much. That's all for me.